Today we speak to Special Forces operator Trevor Beaman. Trevor will share his struggles as a young man and Special Forces operator with complex post-traumatic stress. His openness and candor will leave you absolutely captivated. Enjoy. As a programming note for today's episode, there will be the use of some profanity and topics of sensitive nature to include sexual abuse and attempted suicide. Thank you. Trevor, I appreciate you coming on. You and I have a relatively long past. I think we first met in 2010 in Afghanistan. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. For sure.
And we were in the same company for the longest time. We've ran in the same circles for the longest time. And I just find it, crazy that we both have these struggles, but yet knowing each other for 13 years now, we never related our experiences to one another. And just the struggles that we had, why we didn't share. And you and I were talking before this that, some people just aren't ready to hear what other guys are going through and what other people are going through. But I'd like to give you the platform to kind of go back to your childhood and just kind of talk about what shaped you as a young man.
All right. I appreciate you having me on the show, Brandon. It's I think it's real important that people hear about people's past and experiences and how their journey went and how they got better to an end point in their life where they're actually living happiness and joy. But as you said, I came from a family that was early divorced from my parents, and my mom remarried, and I moved to Chicago, on the suburbs of Chicago, and lived in a poor neighborhood that there was lots of gangs and violence and drugs and things that I was involved in at a young age. And at about the age 8, my stepfather was sexually molesting me. That lasted for nearly a decade of my life until about 16 years old. And with that, I kept a lot of what was happening to myself. I never spoke about it to anyone until I was 16. But the biggest impact that I had from the abuse was that I enjoyed the human touch. The arousal that my body had was very confusing, and I struggled with that for about 30 years with those two things where it was easy to say that I was sexually abused, and it was easy to talk about like those type of things, but the heart of it, the true core of it, was that there was times that I actually wanted it to happen. And to tell people that, I thought was very odd, and it made it feel as if like it wasn't a bad thing that was happening to me.
But I don't want to cut you off in the middle of it, but just thinking about that, like the impression. From the ages of like 8 to 12, kids are so impressionable, and when someone that you know and love and trust kind of takes advantage of you, and you don't necessarily know right from wrong. You just know, things feel good, given certain circumstances. So it's like, I don't mean to cut off your flow, and I want you to share your story, but I also just want to kind of like open it up for like other people where it's like, he kind of shaped you into that, allowing you to think that it was okay.
Right. And so the tie-in is that like I had a biological response to a natural thing that was happening to my body. And I feel as if like people who go to war and they have enjoyment in gunfights and the death and destruction. It's the biological brain and body that is witnessing something, and something happens in their body where they're like, this is really enjoyable. And so that's the same thing. It's like, I went through something that it does not make sense to have enjoyment out of, and explaining that. And the same thing with guys who've gone to war, and they're like, they have erections, or they have this euphoria being in gunfights, and like, I want that high again. It's the same correlation to me.
Yeah, I can
in
see
my brain is that both of those traumatic events felt good. And I have to explain that, like, I'm telling people that killing people was fun and enjoyable, and the people around me had fun doing it. And I'm going to come home and explain that to people, like, war is amazing at one point, and then it wasn't. And how did that shift in the thoughts on war are the same as when I was 8, right? And so for me, it was like downtown Kabul and Kandahar felt like downtown Chicago to me. There was the difference in my brain and the way that my body and brain was seeing that environment, right? And so it's like, the environment is causing the trauma, not necessarily that I'm a Green Beret, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug abuser. It's everything that is happening around me is causing that complex trauma. The best thing to know is that is the human experience, and that you're not alone in your journey, right? So it's every single human being is going through that same thing, and to have that feeling of that you're all alone and there's no possible way that anyone could ever understand how I feel inside is like a made up thing in your own brain, so you don't really have to deal with what you've been through.
So I can completely relate to the feeling of being downrange, getting into a gunfight, that adrenaline spikes. All of your senses are tuned in at 100, and it's like you and your buddies versus the world, or whatever the target is at that moment. Mm-hmm. And then you just move with speed and violence of action, and you just destroy the target. And then there's this sense of euphoria of like going back to like, hundreds of years ago when guys were fighting on the battlefields, and it's like we were victorious, and it's like, it's over, I'm still alive, we were successful, we are the better alpha male. And it really does trigger this, these weird thoughts in your mind where it's like, I specifically recall one firefight where we were shooting and moving, and I took a moment to really just kind of like soak it in, and knowing that at any moment, like, I could be shot. And I mean, we're in the roads of Helmand fighting from like street corner to street corner, but it's like the surreal moment of like, holy crap, man, like, this is unbelievable. And
sure.
But then when you relate it to the childhood trauma, I've been reading a lot as I've been preparing for this podcast and many others, and it's like, I think there's definitely a correlation with childhood trauma and childhood events, and then the PTSD later on in life, especially within like service members or first responders. Go ahead.
So, all right. So here's the problem that I had. So I learned how to compartmentalize really well with trauma, and it essentially was like my superpower going to the Q course and going to war. So I knew how to be the war fighter and the husband back in the States. I absolutely knew how to keep those two things apart. But after 5 deployments, like, I came home and everything came crashing together. And it was no more longer this two separate identities. I was one person who couldn't understand what was going on with my body and my brain. And I was like, there's something wrong with me, but I didn't want to say it was like, trauma related. I wanted to think it was like something wrong with testosterone. I wanted to think something was wrong with my diet. Something was wrong with how much I was sleeping or not sleeping. I didn't want to think that it was the things that I had been through that was causing all these other problems in my life. And so I searched and searched for other outside things rather than looking inward to me and saying, like, I need to take care of these problems that are inside me. I want to find another answer for why I feel the way I do.
So it's like you were looking for something to blame, to lay all of your feelings
right.
at its feet and just be like, this is the reason.
Well, so I think it's like I knew if I found out that I had low testosterone, that was a fix for my problems. And all I wanted to do is be able to fix it without going through a lot of pain, right? I didn't want to have to tell about my life. I didn't want to have to like admit to all these other things that I had been through, where it would just be easier if I could just go on like hormone replacement therapy or testosterone replacement therapy, and then I would just be better and my brain would work better. I'd be more, cognitive, memory, and not thinking that it was, PTSI and TBI. Mm-hmm. I didn't really believe that was what was happening, right, to me. And I think that like over time, like we're talking like 8-9 years of finally getting into behavioral health and learning about different modalities and different things and different treatments, and spending a really long time in this arena, that I realized like it was actually a brain injury, right? And not an actual like anything else problem.
Yeah.
Where I was trying to find like everything else but my brain was something wrong.
Looking, because I know you've come through the other side, and I want to get through some of your struggles. But now that you have the clarity of being able to look back, why do you think there was such a hesitancy to go and try and figure out what the actual root cause was?
I think there's this identity of being a Green Beret and being on an ODA, and that's what defined me. And I think that I was scared to go and have to be like, I might not be a Green Beret anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna lose the thing that I fought for so long, that I'm gonna have potentially. This is Trevor Beaman's brain telling me that like, hey, if you go to do anything, like there's a potential that you might not be able to do the job that you absolutely love and that you absolutely change, people's lives with what you do. And I'm gonna give that up for me. And it's like, I became a Green Beret so I could help other people defend themselves and their family. And I was going to like lose that ability. And I didn't want to do it. I wasn't ready to like hang up my Green Beret and say like, I got to work on me, And I wanted to stay in the fight. Like I wanted to, do a lot of those things. And I really thought that my identity and my ability to serve the regiment was going to go to zero if I didn't, if I went and got help. Kind of internally, that's how I felt.
Yeah. No, and I think a lot of guys feel that same way. So, I know for me specifically, and you and I have talked about this, where it's like guys fight so hard to get to where they're at, they're willing to sacrifice everything else to maintain their success. Mm-hmm. And, when I was going through selection, I told my wife, she was about to give birth to our second kid. And I said, do not call me because I'm not coming home. Mm-hmm. I will finish selection. So at that point in my life, I was willing to miss the birth of my son to be successful. Right. And then you are successful. And it's like, well, now I have to maintain this. I can't just become a Green Beret and just be like, well, I made it, so I don't have to do anything else. It's like, no, you're constantly being assessed. And everybody reminds you of that from the time you graduate or pass selection and graduate the Q course.
So I really feel is like that commitment that you have, that fire to become a Green Beret, right? That gets transferred into being at group and being on an ODA, right? Okay, but at some point that in your career, that commitment needs to shift to something else, because we're going to all retire. We're all going to get out of the service. We're all going to move on with our lives. And so finding something that commitment that you gave to the regiment and, going through the Q course, what are you putting that onto now? And for me, that commitment was to get better before I got out of the Army. And so like next week I put in my retirement paperwork and I get out, in 2 years. And so I've that same fire that I had inside me to become a Green Beret is the same commitment and intensity that I have to get better before getting out. Because I feel as if I don't get better before I get out, I don't think I ever will.
So you said one of the reasons why you didn't get help years ago was because you were afraid that it was going to prohibit you from progressing in your career. I know you've had struggles and you've been successful over the last few years. Did it actually prevent you from still being a Green Beret?
No, it didn't at all.
Did any?
So I had 2 suicide attempts, right? One in 2015 and one in 2019. Both I went to a psych ward, one at Fort Bragg and one here in Jacksonville. And both times, one was I had third group members there, and they were like absolutely 100% supported me. And within SWIC, because I was down in Key West, like they were 100% backed everything that I was going through. And like I spent 60 days in rehab doing a lot of hard work, and I got promoted to Master Sergeant at that same time, right? And so I left Key West and became a first sergeant at SOCOM, right, for 2 years. And so there's never been anything that was like, you're not going to progress because you went and got help. Your career progression is not going to change because of, self-referral to behavioral health.
So where do you think we get this stigma from where it's like, because everybody thinks it, and maybe it's a internal monologue that is like, if you do this, your career is over. But where does that stem from, that guys don't want to reach out and get help because they're afraid of this?
I mean, in a way, I feel like it starts at the core of the guys that are around you. That at the 12 guys on the ODA, like, what is that climate like? What is the feeling of when you're at home? Do you have support from your family members and from your company leadership? I think that it's like one bad incident, right, will disintegrate 20 good stories, right? And then so like guys really, really, really bring up the bad stuff, but we don't really hear about like good things that happen so much. It's like I went to behavioral health and it took them 60 days to see me. Or you hear things of like, if you go do this, then I'm just going to put you on the SWIC levy because obviously you need help.
Right.
And like you hear these things and it's like, I've never witnessed it or been through it. There's some bureaucracy that's within the mental health system that I got to see, which is a kind of like a weird thing with UICs and like with like Army Medical Command and things like that, where they have to go see certain providers. That was 10 years ago, but and now the service member gets to choose which provider they're going to want to go see.
Right.
So there's been a change in that, right? Because like I had built rapport with third group behavioral health, and I was in SWIC, and they're like, you must go to the SWIC social worker. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I have, 2 years rapport with the third group people. I need to go there. And they're like, no, you can't. And I was like, well, that's kind of really screwed up. But that has now changed. So I think that some of the things that I had seen and went through have been fixed throughout time.
And do you think it's
But
been,
to see
has it been fixed across the board? So like, being within special operations, we get a lot of, we get special treatment oftentimes. And, we get a lot of money pumped into us to maintain our physical and mental capabilities. But what about the guys in like regular Army or, first responders or anything like that? Like it's different across the board. Are they getting the same? Do you know if they're getting the same type of opportunities to, get the help that they need?
So I can only speculate on that, Brandon. So I truly believe with like the human performance and wellness that we have from, SOCOM, from the Preservation of Family and Forest Initiative through SOCOM and the CARE Coalition that we have, I don't know of, and I don't believe that if you are in the regular Army, you have at least those three things to help you that we get. And so I believe that SOF has a Rolodex of things for guys to go get help, where I don't believe it is as robust at the regular Army level. And the treatment level and the treatments that we can get that our command will back us is absolutely unprecedented. And I do not believe that that's what will happen in the regular Army.
Yeah.
But that's Trevor Beaman's opinion without any true knowledge of what a service member like in the 82nd goes through when they tell their, platoon leader, platoon sergeant, hey, I'm dealing with this. What do I do? And then what is the, third and second effects of that action, right?
Yeah.
Where I feel as if like people are invested in Green Berets and soft guys, and they want us to come back because we are a strategic element, a strategic importance, and we have impacts on the world things where I think that at the regular Army level, they don't have that ability to that foresight to see like how much a single person can impact the Army and the mission that we have.
Right.
Whereas SOF is completely different.
Yeah, because
and so
I was going to say, because when you look at us and our experiences that you and I have, we've been sent as singletons into a country to represent. We may be the only Green Beret there representing the regiment. Right. And when I say regiment, I mean all of Special Forces. Whereas with regular Army, they're going to send in an entire unit. And if anything happens to some people, they'll just replace them. And I can say I was one of the ones that was in the 82nd and felt the ire of, hey, I just got selected, my leg hurts, I'm on profile, and they're like, well, I don't care, you're going to work out anyways. And it's like those bad experiences. And that's probably where it translates from. But it's like you said, it's who are you surrounding yourself with? Who is in your tribe or your circle that is lifting you up and helping you out? And unfortunately, if you get put into a unit that is toxic, you're going to have some very toxic experiences.
Right. So, I mean, if you have leadership that believes that mental health is a priority versus someone who believes that having a traumatic event is just a part of like your service and you don't need help with it, you get two different outcomes of what's happening and what you believe that you can go do to get better, or you like don't believe that you can go get better. So I think it's so independently on each person and what surrounds them that leads them to go get help. And if they have the like almost like the backing of that, they'll be supported. Yeah, and if they truly truly believe that no matter what I go do and what I go say to people, that I will be accepted back here,
Right.
and people will trust me in what I tell them I'm going to do. So like, people took a lot of chances on Trevor Beaman, because like, I went to the psych ward in 2015 and like, I'm going to kill myself. And a year later, I was in Burkina Faso by myself and doing strikes in Mali. And
Right.
so like, and someone was like, I gotta take a chance on Trevor Beaman. And I was like, and this is where kind of a problem arose, is that like, I was doing it for the men. I wanted to show third group and people that had behavioral health problems that you can go back and go do this job and be really, really, really awesome at it. And I wanted to prove it to everyone so that I wanted it so that I could be strength for other people, that they knew that they could go to behavioral health, have a suicidal ideation event, and then to come back to an ODA, deploy as a singleton, do awesome strategic things with other foreign countries, and know that someone could trust me to go do that. It was like, I was doing it for everyone else except for me. Like, I wasn't getting better for me, I was getting better for the regiment, so that other guys had almost like a mentor or someone that they could look at. Like, if that guy can go do something after everything he's been through, then I can have the power to do the same thing.
And I think that's a great testament to others, but it's like you said, you still have to work on yourself and get better. So I would like to, if you're open to it, I'd like to explore those two attempts in 2015 and 2019. And my thought for that is kind of where your mind was at. What were the events like leading up to it? And it's so that way others can see what you were going through as like, hey, I recognize this happening in somebody else. And then I got to follow up after we talk about that.
Yep. Okay, so 2015, I had left third group to go to SWIC, and I was a part of the National Defense University Master's Program. And so I was kind of away from people that I knew. So like my surroundings and had changed a little bit there. I had severe increase of drinking compared to what I was doing earlier when I was back at third group. So alcohol abuse like severely increased. And then the content of what I was learning at school really bothered me. It was this like pillars of power of Congress, the use of the military, this, about diplomacy, intelligence, the military aspects, and economics, like this dime thing. We start to deep dive into that. And as I was sitting in these classes, I really started to have this belief that we were just a tool for congressmen and politicians. And I was like, no one really cares about us at all. And I had this huge defeat in my soul. Like, I am fighting for America. And I believe the leaders that are in Washington only use me as leverage on other countries. And it literally just destroyed my heart and soul about my military service. And it was really, really hard for me to like accept, because it's like I was feeling like I was putting my life on the line for the deployments that I went on, and these people aren't really caring about who we are. They just need us to go fight places for, the will of the nation, essentially. There's that. And then my daughter had been born, and there was a little bit of disconnect from me and my wife. And I kind of felt like I didn't have a connection with her for a while. And so I was drinking a lot, and I was drinking during the day during class, and I basically drove to Womack, and I was sitting in the parking lot. Like, I have a decision to make right now. Either I'm going to go out to like Normandy drop zone and kill myself, or I'm going to walk into the ER and I'm going to ask for help. And that's where my behavioral health journey in the Army started, is that I chose to walk into the ER, and then I looked at the people there and I was like, I need a safe place to be because I don't trust myself anymore. And I got swooped up and I got, put into the psych ward for about 5 days. The only bad thing that kind of came out of that, after sharing about everything in my life, as a kid and everything, is that the psychiatrist that was working there was like, all right, Sergeant Beaman, like, if you quit drinking, everything will be better, essentially, is what I was told. And sure, maybe on the surface level, that was true, but later on, I find out like how I could actually, alcohol was a tool for me to deal with the trauma that I was having inside.
Yeah.
And so my wife later on, we have a conversation a few years later, as I'm like going to go to rehab, in 2019, after another like hyper suicidal ideation event, which is different, which we can talk to that, but if you want, I can go into that, or I can talk about like why there was a view change on alcohol and trauma, and how it was like one's a tool that's coping with one thing, and like you're not an alcoholic, you're just using the substance so that you can kind of like get day to day.
Yeah, let's talk about 2019, and then let's talk about the use of substance abuse to kind of manage everything.
Yeah. So then in 2019, everything was going well at work, and like I was in Key West, and me and my wife didn't necessarily have a disagreement, but what Trevor heard was that I am not needed, and that I am not a provider for our family, and that she did not say any of that. I was drunk. And what I heard is that you aren't needed in our family, and it's not that at all what the conversation was, but that's what I heard because of the state of mind I was in. And my wife was putting the kids down, and I wrote her a letter saying like, hey, tell the kids I love them. And I walked out of the house, and I went down, and I was going to just like go into the ocean, and that was it. So my wife obviously is like, holy shit, this isn't good. I know that he has problems with suicide. And she actually reached out to the guys that I work with, and they came down and got me and brought me home. And a good friend of mine like sat down with me all night and like talked to me and stuff, and really got things kind of worked out. And so I started working with the VA counselor there, and then that's when my wife was like, listen, if we get his trauma fixed, he'll quit drinking, right? So the past 2 suicide attempts, right, I was drunk. So that substance were in me that were making me think a certain way. So then I go to Jacksonville in July of 2019 for an ASAP kind of thing, because I had admitted that I was drinking a lot at to the VA down in Key West, and because I was a diver, having a disorder on your dive physical, there is a requirement that you get treatment. So I was like, fine, I will go to Jacksonville so that I can go, get this education so that I can state that, I can continue to dive because I got treatment. Well, at that facility, I had a lot of downtime. I was away from my family. I didn't have a purpose, and I had access to a vehicle. And at that point, I was driving around Jacksonville, and I was like, all I want to do is end my life. I just want to drive my car into a tree and kill myself. And the difference at this point was that I felt as the world was like completely dark and blacked out, and as if like the Grim Reapers ripped my soul out of me. And I didn't have any love for my wife and have any love for my kids. All I wanted was all the pain inside of me to end. And the difference was I was sober, and I was like, oh geez, this is the same feeling I felt when I was 12 years old when I, tried to commit suicide. I was like, this is the exact same thing. This is not good. And so I went back to the treatment facility, and I was like, here's the deal. Here's what's going on. Like, if you don't put me into the Jacksonville psych ward, like, I'm going to die tonight. And I got admitted to there. And I spent about 3 or 4 days there. And then I was transferred to Panama City Beach, where I went to the Emerald Coast Behavioral Hospital. And I spent 60 days there doing like cognitive behavioral therapy, Alcohol Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, like group therapy stuff, and EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing stuff, which was extremely painful to do. And it was really expensive. So I think about like people who are like, how can I take 60 days off of work, and how do I come up with $100,000 to get better? And people can't do that unless you're in like, you have really good insurance or you're in the military. Those are the two things that or you're ultra wealthy to be able to get help. And I got a lot of great things out of it. I really did. It showed me a lot of tools and techniques to deal with the stresses of life, like building coping mechanisms, rather than like my old techniques was like, I'm just going to black out, because blacking out takes away the pain.
Yeah. It's done
with. The problem with it, right? The problem is that you have to keep drinking. You have to keep it. You have to continuously use it to allow yourself to black out from the thoughts and the memories and the pain of everything that you've been through. And it doesn't help, right? So there's this very small window where alcohol is like, I'm in this perfect zone where I don't feel anything, but I don't hate myself. Right. And then it's like one more drink, and you're like, I'm self-destructive now.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to be able to manage that, right? Like that sweet spot of it. And it generally doesn't happen. And then like, there's, memories of the past, there's historic events, there's things that happen all the time, right? So there's always the right time to drink, right? There's always something happening in our lives that gives us an excuse to drink, right? So we've lost so many people in our life because of the fucking war that like literally every single weekend I could be like, I can pull up on my, social media and be like, I knew that guy that got killed in the helmet, or I knew that guy that got killed in Iraq, or I know that someone who got killed in Africa. I know all those guys. And so now it's like, well, I might as well drink for them.
Yeah.
Because that's what I should be doing. Or like it's St. Patrick's Day, or it's the 4th of July, or it's Thanksgiving. Like everyone else is drinking, so it fits in. Or you surround yourself with people who are socially drinking, but you're abusing alcohol. Like I can go play golf and I can drink 18 beers and 18 holes.
Yeah.
That's not okay. By the way.
Right.
Like that's not, but that's if you're living that way. And it's like, it's okay if I go to the country club and drink. So I surrounded myself with things that made it okay to abuse the alcohol because I put myself into those situations. Right. And so now I've been sober almost 4 years.
Congrats.
And yeah, thanks. Uh, but when I was drinking, I didn't believe that there was things I could do that would keep me happy, and give me joy and happiness. I only thought that surrounding myself with alcohol could provide that,
So
and that there was no fun in life.
what did you replace it with?
But in the beginning, and down in Key West, I started spearfishing a lot, and I couldn't drink when I was, doing breath holds and trying to kill fish at 100 feet. So what really started to happen is, like, when I started to, like, breath holds and go underwater to hunt for fish, is that I was hyper focused, and what it did was it took the same effect of what alcohol did, is black out everything in the past, is the same thing that was happening when I was underwater, is that I couldn't think about anything else that I'd been through in my life, because I had to focus on everything in my environment that was around me.
Yeah.
And I could do that by just holding my breath. And so I started to build this, like, mindfulness of, like, I can take care of myself by choosing to do different things and not using a substance to make that happen. Like, I knew that I could feel better on my own. I had to, like, show myself that it was possible, that I could take care of myself.
How did you get that? How did you get that clarity though? Because I think so many guys struggle with, like, they know alcohol is not the answer. They know drugs is not the answer. And it's like, but you stumbled upon it by spearfishing.
Mm-hmm.
So how did,
Yeah.
and different things are going to work for different people, but how do you get to that point where it's like, I don't need this because I have this?
Mm-hmm. In reality of it, the real truth of it, all of it, is that me and my wife had to have something that was ours, right? So my wife does CrossFit, and she's like, I need an hour a day so I can be alone to go do my thing. And I was like, cool, I'm going to go spearfish for an hour. So I made time for me. And during that time that it was just for me to be alone, was essentially me going to, like, a therapist, or for me to go, like, on a run or something like that. Like, I made time to kind of do some introspection in a way that I did when I was in selection, right? So during, like, the STAR course, like, I thought about my life and the things that I had been through, and you fast forward 10 years, and I'm doing the same thing that I was doing during land nav as I'm doing while I was spearfishing. Like, I was taking time to reflect on the past and to see how it made me feel. And I just put time into that. And then, like, I was going to all these different types of therapies and stuff. And so I started to really express those feelings that I was having to other people. So I started to voice the feelings that were inside me, out loud. And I think that really helped, is that I was saying what was in me. And that as soon as I said the words, like, I wasn't imprisoned by those feelings anymore.
Yeah. No, I think that's powerful. And one thing I've noticed through this journey is that when guys finally decide to, like, recognize that they need help and then they get help, they can't, and they get better. And I don't know, like, anybody's ever fully better, but you can build upon it and live a happier life. But once you start to get there, you want to share that happiness with other people, because
Right.
where you were, you can see it in other guys. And it's like, dude, let me tell you about this great thing, man. It's called therapy. It's called stellate ganglion block. It's called ketamine. It's called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And
Right.
you want to share everything with everybody, because it's like, this worked for me. Let me tell you how you can get better. And unfortunately, I think a lot of guys are just like, nope, I'm good. I don't need anything. But
yeah, and that's a shame. I tell you that, like, I didn't get any better by myself
yeah,
at all. I had to have other people with me to get better. I mean, the EMDR, right? The efficacy of that, the percentage of it will actually improve is only 20%.
So
And it's extremely painful to do.
So I did some research on that because you sent that to me as one of the things that you did.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a few videos on it, but talk everybody through like what it actually is.
So you work on one traumatic event in your life, and what you essentially do is you like write out everything in detail what happened to you, and you spend a lot of time on that event in your mind prior to going into a session with a therapist. And when you enter the session, the therapist is like, hey, I want you to take all of this singular event and bring it to the forefront of your mind. And then what they do is sometimes they have like a light bar that goes back and forth that like tracks with your eyes. They have either like their hand in front of your face where you track. It's essentially putting your brain into like REM sleep in a way, but you're not sleeping, you're wide awake. And what ends up happening is that those memories start to like go past your eyes, like you're watching a train go past and you're looking out the window and you're seeing the people in the train, but instead of people, it's the events, right? For me, it was like a drive-in movie theater where everything that was happening to me was on the screen and I was watching it happen. And so I worked on the first time my stepfather ever abused me. So for 60 days, I did EMDR 2 to 3 times a week. And I did one event, the very first time. And I would tell this lady everything that I was seeing and everything that I smelled, everything that I felt. And so while I'm saying what I'm seeing, I can feel it on my body happening at the same time. And it's really, really emotional. And it put me into a very suicidal state because of how much I was like expressing and letting out of my body and the feelings of it. It's essentially you're reliving the event again. But the difference between that and when I was a kid is that after the session, I was able to sleep. And the sleep, true good sleep without any sleep aids or anything like that, like essentially took my brain, if you were to look at it as like a hard drive, and they took it, basically it defragged my brain or hard drive and took all those scattered memories that I had and placed them back into an order that made sense. And what ended up happening over the 2 months is that those memories became, instead of like a scalpel sharpness in my soul, it made it into like a dull butter knife. And so it's like it allowed those memories to still be a part of who I am, but they no longer had the ability to hurt me anymore. The only problem is that I had over 50 times that I was sexually abused by my stepfather. So it took me 2 months to get rid of one time. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have enough time in my life to get through all this stuff. And that's just me as a child. That has nothing to do about killing people in Afghanistan. I'm like, oh my Lord, I have so many things. And then like watching people explode and like being shot at by, Carl G explosions and mortar rounds and like recoilless rifles being shot at me and stuff. I'm like, I have those memories in the forefront of my brain, and I can see it happening all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not going away. And so then, you fast forward to July of 2021, and I go do this ketamine stellate ganglion block, dual sympathetic reset.
Let's talk about
and
that.
Everything goes away, right? Wild. Really cool event. And I'll talk about ketamine and why ketamine is so important to me and why I'm a super big advocate for ketamine. So,
legally, right?
Ketamine
like
infusion,
you're not just buying it off the
legally,
street.
Yeah. No. So this is all done by a and an anesthesiologist at a medical center in Chicago. And there's nurses and stuff that are around, and like people are checking on you. And so it's about an hour event, and it kind of takes you in some weird phases of it. I'll kind of describe the 5 phases of ketamine, right? For me and how it made me feel. And so a lot of my depression and things was based off of pain, right? And so this physical pain from being in the Army for, at that point, 21 years, like my body hurt, and I just wanted the pain of my body to go away. So that's ketamine does the very first thing, like as you start to go on this infusion, the pain is subsided from you. And then there's if you don't know about ketamine, there's a dissociative effect that it has. So it kind of pulls you out of your body, right? In a way, it kind of feel like you're like higher up, I guess. And so you start, the noise of the everyday living ends. So they're thinking about like emails, thinking about different people you got to call, different appointments, it's gone. And you have like clarity of mind to see the world as it is, right? Then you almost feel as if you were the only living human energy in the world. And to me, that was really impactful, is that I finally got to see that I'm something by myself. And then it takes you into for me, it took me that I had a desire to die. And I wanted to feel as if I was dying, but I didn't want to lose my life. And so the third phase of ketamine is you come to a realization that you're going to die. And I thought I was going to watch the nurse come into the room and be like, we have to call his wife and kids that he died here today. And I was like, that moment and that the way I felt made me this is what people that have suicidal ideations right now need to feel. They just need to feel as if their life is over.
It's like they see it's like the out of body experience, where it's it happens, then they see what happens after and all the people that it's impacted by.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So for me, it was really powerful, right? So I'll talk about the impacts of the trip of it here in a second. But so let me finish this, the 2 more things. So then I feel as if my soul, I guess you could call it, if I'm not really a religious person, but the energy of my body was connected to every living thing in the world. I was like, every tree, every animal, every human being is all connected to me. Every single human has life, and we're all living together. And then the final thing that was the biggest is that ketamine helped me generate the idea that life was worth living, where I didn't have the ability to do that on my own. That I wanted to live even though there would be a possibility that my wife and kids say were to die in a horrible accident, that before this treatment of ketamine in the stellate ganglion block, all I wanted was there to be an excuse to die. And after this, all I had is excuses to live. And
Awesome.
the amount of energy I had and love for my wife and kids was unmeasurable that I'd ever had a feeling in my life. And it allowed my brain to know that I could have happiness and joy where I didn't believe it was ever fucking possible. That my body could ever tell me that I could be happy again. Like I was a 7-year-old kid before my innocence was kind of ripped away from me.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is wild. And so there's those benefits. So the thing you have to know though, the psychoactive trip of ketamine isn't the actual thing that makes you better, right? It's really awesome experience, and I really like want to share like how that experience felt to me. But the medicine in your brain is what's the real impact. So ketamine helps increase the amount of neuroplasticity in your brain, and it increases neural pathways and synapses, right? So there's a two-part effect, right? So the trip is one thing, which is not really making you heal. But for me, I felt like I got a lot of healing from it. But the other part is the working on the brain and the TBI impacts of explosions.
Yeah.
And so I did, and it took a lot of desire to drink and to use drugs. It was weird, right? So I used the drug to not want to do drugs. Bizarre. Like, you know, we're being told for a really long time that like drugs are bad.
Right.
And then now I'm doing drugs and I'm getting better, which is awesome. Like it's really, really impactful.
But it goes from self-medicating. You're not self-medicating. It's being administered appropriately and properly.
Right, for sure. And so I did 3 of those infusions, and then I did a stellate ganglion block on my right side of my neck, and then the following day I did it on my left side. So what happens with the stellate ganglion block for me? It took all of my memories that I was living with every single day and made it into a long-term memory, if that makes sense.
To me, it does.
So it doesn't have to be war or sexual abuse. It could be anything. Like you got in a car accident, and every day, like all you remember is that like I went through that red light and I T-boned a car, and you relive it all day long.
Yep.
What the SGB does is it takes that like hypervigilance, that takes that memory that you can't get out of the forefront of your brain, and allows it to seep deep down into your body, because it allows you to process it and absorb it. Whereas before it was like stuck. There was a point in my brain, like it would get to a point where it'd go away, and then it'd just be right back in the front of my eyes all day long. So everything that I did.
My experience with it was like I was carrying all the baggage that I had from my past. Mm-hmm. So everything that was like constantly in my mind of like combat deployments, experiences, traumatic events, I was carrying it in a rucksack. And then I got the shot in my neck, and it was like somebody pulled that rucksack off of me, and I just felt lighter. And things that would, it was just a completely different experience.
So here's the biggest impact of what the SGB did for me. And the war stuff, yeah, it made a lot of that just go into being processed and understood, and kind of like, I'm okay with those things. I'm not reliving them every day. The biggest thing is that I was like, I don't want to kill my stepfather anymore. And I was like, I can't believe I'm actually going to say this. Like, I absolutely forgive this person for what they did to me. And I'm like, I've been trying to get there, and I was so angry about it that this person would do this to me, that I would have to carry this on the inside of me for the entirety of my life. And I was so angry about it.
Yeah.
And this let me just be like, you know what? I'm not going to give that person any more time in my life.
Yep.
And it allowed my brain to just take it, and then I could just move on. Where there was no moving on before. And be like, ta-da, like it's like a magic trick. Like I just woke up and it was like everything is gone. I was like, whoa. But as we know, like I have been through a lot of therapy since the age of 12. And so I had a lot of time with therapists, social workers, psychiatrists, right? And so for me, like coming out of all this trauma, like I had the skills and the knowledge to like cope with life, right? Where some folks haven't put that time in. So like, as a warning, I just want to say, like, don't believe that you go get SGB and life is just better. Like, there's a lot more work, and that journey is going to take even probably more time, but you have like the clarity of mind to be able to take those tools and those treatments and actually implement them at the best possible way you can, because you don't have all of this scatteredness and all of this memories of the past impacting the way you feel every day. So if you can take away the things that are bothering you the most and that you spend the most time on in your brain all the time, if you can pull those away, and then now we can keep you hyper focused on getting better and using techniques to learn how to cope with life.
Yep.
Right. And manage life rather than avoiding it, and thinking that, like, I'll never get better. I think like this really shows that, like, there is potential in my life that I can actually be a whole person again, and that I'm the identity of being a person with trauma is no longer going to be me anymore. Like, that is not my crutch. That is not something I lean on to anymore. And that is something that I used to be, and I grew out of being that human being. And now I'm at something different because I put in the hard work and I allowed my brain to finally relax and be able to use the things that are around me that doctors and therapists are showing me. And it actually works now, where before you have so many different barriers in your brain that you're like, I'm trying to do all this work and nothing's happening. Nothing's right. Working. I'm still feel like shit. I still want to hurt myself. These things that I live with every single day aren't going away. No matter how much I talk about it, no matter how many things I go do, no matter how many mindfulness things and coping skills that I have, I can't get it out of my brain. It's just stuck there.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, everywhere I go, everything I do, it's the memories are there and I can't get over it. And I'm like, at a time, and then at a point, you're just like, I'm absolutely tired of it. And I just want to die. And I get it. I absolutely understand how suicide becomes something that is the only answer. I truly do. And my stance is that, listen, I really want you to try everything possible before you go ahead and end your life. Because the legacy of who you are by suicide is the legacy of what you are. And I know, like, for my kids and my wife, like, my wife would be fine if I committed suicide. It would impact her a lot. But my children, my daughter would think that it was something that was because of her. And my son would be the hardest person in the world. And he would probably work himself to death. And I couldn't allow that to happen. I couldn't impact those little people the same way I was impacted as a kid, because it's lifelong trauma.
Your story is so impactful because you took it all the way up to the edge and then were able to come out on the other side, where I think a lot of people that they never get that opportunity to see what you just said, talking about, you know, logically thinking through the impact of what suicide has on those that you leave behind. And I've never understood it. I've never been able to wrap my mind around, how does somebody get to the point where death is the only answer? And just because I look at, and it's because, like, still being here, I see the impact that it has on families and the kids. And so it's like, how do you get to a place where, and so I thank you for sharing all that, because it's like, it's actually revealing where it's like, I can relate in certain aspects of not feeling like, you know, like I've told my wife, like, it may be better off if I'm not even here, part of this family, because I'm such a burden on you and the kids. It would be easier for you if I was no longer here. And I didn't mean that in the context
Right.
of like suicide, but like, let's get divorced so that way you can live a happy and healthy life. And
Yeah, it's absolutely.
but it's like
So I felt that I was going to pass on this trauma feeling, this trauma. I felt I was going to pass it on to my kids. And I was like, if I'm not here, they won't get this, like, depression gene or the suicidal gene or this thing that I believed that like I was going to give them. And I was just like making that up in my mind. It's like my mind was tricking me into being like, see, like you aren't worth anything,
right.
and you're only going to be a burden to your family. And it's just go ahead and just be, don't be living anymore.
And
it's just easier that way.
And I think we look at that as like we're helping our family. Like if we get divorced, it'll make you and the kids better. If I kill myself, it'll make you and the kids better. And I don't think we're looking at the fact where it's like, no, you're setting them up for like, now I have divorced parents. Now I'm living without my dad or my mom or whomever. And that event in and of itself is traumatic, which can create PTS in kids and loved ones. Man, that's powerful. You've got a TED Talk coming up, don't you?
Yeah. The 20th of May, I'm going to go up to Portland and do a TED Talk in front of 3,500 people. And it kind of covers my life and like how I got, abused and war and a little bit of the stellate ganglion block and how I moved on and was able to manage some stuff, and a little bit of hope to people that like, the trauma is a part of every single human being, and you're not alone in it. And it's I think I had to recognize that pain is in every single human being, and I wasn't the only person. Right? I realized that the thinking that there is no one else that could understand what I was going through was a lie. Right? I'm like, I'm not the only person that's had anything bad happen to me.
Yeah.
But my brain wanted to tell me that you're the only guy that's ever been through anything hard, and you're the worst, human being on earth because of all this stuff, and you don't deserve to live. I'm like, what? And so that clarity, that change is like a long process, right? I wish it could just happen in like a week. I'm talking years and years of hard work and trying to find like the best that I can get, right? And like I was ecstatic from coming out of rehab, because I was like, I actually got something out of me. I actually got better. And I was like, okay, like I was really good for a long time. And then it's like slowly those other things that I had been through started to creep back up on me. And that's when I was like, I talked to Jeff Doherty at Third Group, and he was like, hey, they're going to do, this is how I got introduced into Dr. Lipoff and the Stella Center, and going and do this ketamine, the DSR, soft procedure, whatever they're going to call it. And I was like, okay, sure. I'm like, I put in a lot of work, but then I had essentially like 2 years where I was like, I'm fabulous. The tools and techniques that are working from like AA and, the different type of group therapy skills, like they're working. But it's like, there's like this creep back of the trauma events in my body. And I was like, great. Like I did all this work and it's back again. And I'm like, oh, another like, a failure feeling. Like when is like all I'm doing is searching for something to get better. And it's just like slowly it's coming back on me, slowly coming back. And I'm like, man, like I was doing so well. Like, why am I, going back, regressing into stuff? And then, at the ketamine SGB, it's like, I don't know, it was in July, it'll be 2 years. And like, I haven't felt better in my life. And it's
It's
absolutely
great.
incredible. But just like, but I have to emphasize, like, my journey doesn't have to be anybody else's, right?
Yeah.
I want people, my like emphasis is this, is go on the journey and take the path that leads you to your end of your trauma experience. And that you get to the end of it and it's like, I love life and I love being a part of my family and I love every single day. And I know tomorrow is going to be even better than today is. That's the end point that I want people to get through. The path that you travel to get there is everyone's individual path. I just wanted to be able to share the different modalities and the different things that I went through to be like, maybe that's right for you. Maybe it's not right for you. That people get to choose the avenue that they want to seek for their own mental health benefits.
Yeah. Trevor, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing all of this. I have links for the Stella Center, eraseptsdnow.org. I'm going to put all of these on the website. You have anything you want to plug?
You can follow me on Instagram. It's Trevor A. Beaman. There's a lot of things there that you can read about the research that I've been through. They did Dr. Lipoff published a study, a year-long study of me that gives some information about what the ketamine actually did, the dosages is in there. There's also a article that I did for USASOC. I went and talked to Jenna Roberson, and there's some good stuff there's links on there that it kind of highlights the new path for what USASOC's doing for suicide awareness. So there's some really good stuff in there that talks about like loneliness, purpose, and like access to lethality, right? And that's sort of like the big three things that are leading service members to suicide, or those type of things. And so like just be aware of that. That's like what's going on in your life. That like those are triggers, or those are things that can increase your likelihood of a suicidal event. And I really appreciate you having me on.
No, thank you.
I am super excited that you're getting into this type of stuff. And I hope you and Sarah are doing well, and the kids are awesome. It's like, back in 2010 in Afghanistan, that we're just some young kids that are surrounded by some really extreme, really, really awesome warriors.
Yeah.
That I'm really, really proud to know. And they did absolutely phenomenal things. I think that the leadership that we saw when we got to group was exceptional.
Yep.
And those type of guys weren't always there. But I think that we got to go show like, what right looks like, kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think we had a really awesome start into our career in the regiment. And I think that we held on to what we were taught. And I think we got to a point where it's like, I am going to grow out of being a Green Beret. And now I'm going to move on to something that's more or just as impactful as that part of my life. And that growth out of who you were is still who you are, but it doesn't have to be what you are forever.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a small portion of your life of being in the Army and being a Green Beret, and that like our 20 years of service, and you live 80 years, like in the grand scheme of things, it's just a small portion of your life. And I just don't want people to hold on to that as that their sole identity forever. because I think that you're really giving up a lot of your life onto something of the past. And that doesn't, to me, it's like PTSD trauma is focused on the past and not focused on the future, where you can really accept that you're a new human being and have a new identity, right? And to know that those bad times of the past don't have to continually live inside you till tomorrow. Like, it's okay to get rid of those things and put those things to rest and move on with life and to be happy. And I think happiness is kind of a trap as well, but like, there's ups and downs. Everyone has pain and everyone has happiness, and it ebbs and flows. And just recognize that, like, you will never be happy every single day of your life. It's impossible for that to happen, because if that's the way you're living, I don't think you're truly living. I think that is being as perfect as possible. And I don't think being perfect is any fun. I think that you have to have, you have to have mistakes. You have to have challenges.
Yeah.
You have to be building on something. And sometimes you got to go backwards and be like, well, I messed that up. Well, let's try a different approach. I think if everything was perfect every single time, you'd be bored at life.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge of life is very important. And taking care of all the things that you can, right? And I mean, it's like, there's so many things that, like, you have to, like, get in right for you. It's like, you have to get your diet right. You have to get your exercise right. You got to get your sleep right. You have to do all these other things. And then maybe there's some other outside thing that might actually impact you in your journey the most, right? So it's like, let's look at all the behaviors, all the things that I'm doing right now that isn't adding to being positive in my life, and let's work on those things first, and then let's go work on some other stuff afterwards. But I absolutely enjoy having this discussion with you, and I really, really want to bring awareness to being suicidal, having trauma events that you live every day, that, guys, like, you are not alone in feeling the way you feel inside.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just like, you're not alone, and happiness and joy will return in your life.
I appreciate your candor. You're welcome back anytime, and let's do this journey together. Let's get this out there, and let's make a difference in everybody's life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, Trevor, thank you for coming on. I'm Brandon Langford, and this is PTS&Me. Thank you.